Thank you so much, Carlo. I know we're running over time and it's the last session before lunch, so I will get started. Just to introduce myself first, I'm going to start with my introduction and then what is non-binary language. Talk about what I mean by inclusive language and different lenses that we focus on. And then a little bit of a summary on research in gender in machine translation so far. Then the training that we've done, so the actual project that I've come to talk about, and then our lessons learned. So a little bit about me. It's true that I love trash TV. If you want to speak about Married at First Sight later, I'm your person. So I am also the inclusive language lead in EA localization. Basically, that means that I work on raising awareness of inclusive language in source language and also in localization that we do in video games and internally as well. I'm also one of the moderators for the Gala SIG for Inclusive Language, which I've been told is one of the most popular SIGs at Gala, so first win. And some of the things that I am the Global Professional Development Pillar at Pride. That's our internal employee network, our employee resource group, basically. And that links in a little bit later to what I'm going to be talking about. And finally, as Carlos said, my background is in diversity and education. I have a master's degree in social justice and education. And now I want to talk about the inclusive language lenses. So normally in localization, when we talk about inclusive language, we're thinking about gender. That's always our focus mainly because that's where it's more prominent. But I just wanted to mention some of the other perspectives that we think about in inclusive language. They're all here. I'll just point out a few examples. So obviously gender identity is a main focus. And then we have disability, faith, religion, age. I think this is a really interesting one because very commonly, especially in English, we mention phrases or terms that are negative towards older people or even younger people as well. And even some of the words that we use about having a fresh perspective of what that actually means is wanting to, a lot of the times looking for fresh ideas, it's talking about younger people. So some of this coded language happens a lot with age. Also thinking about economic and social status, sexual orientation, marital status, cultural identity, and ethnicity, race and ethnicity. I live in Spain as well, and so I speak Spanish, and one of the things that surprised me in Spanish is just how non-inclusive language is very embedded within Spanish language. Some phrases like trabajo como un negro, talking about how hard you're working. But it's the same in English as well. It's not exclusively in Spanish. Very recently, if we think about sexual orientation, well, in the past few years, the term, oh, that's so gay, is used in a very negative way to mean something a bit rubbish. It's interesting attending the other presentations as well, how this kind of non-inclusive language can creep in unexpected ways. In one presentation, I heard someone talk about handicapped people. And that's interesting because it's a word that's not really used very much in British English, maybe more so in American English. But in general terms, disability activists and disability inclusive language will ask that we no longer use this term. So that's just an overview of what we're thinking about with inclusive language in general, but we're going to focus on gender. So in particular, I'm going to talk about why non-binary language. But before I do that, just to see a show of hands from everyone here, if anyone at the moment is prioritizing non-binary language in their localization work. Okay, be honest. That's more than I thought, so that's great to see. So why non-binary language? The last session was talking about not the last session, 2 sessions ago next door, your session talking about future-proofing. If we think about the future generations as well, 1 in 5, this is a study from Gallup, which is from 2 years ago, 2022, and 1 in 5 Gen Z people in the United States identify as LGBTQ+. We're based in gaming. We're very focused on what our players want so that we can provide it for them. And so a recent study just last year from Newzoo said that 71% of Gen Alpha are people who have been born since 2010, so diversity is important for them, Gen Alpha gamers. And actually, every generation, with the exception of baby boomers, so every generation since 1964, in that same study showed that diversity was very important for them in terms of gaming. And then, if you're thinking about your clients and the different ways that you work, what will they be wanting in the future? So how important should non-binary language be in your localization? So, gender in machine translation. Men are human, but women are not. So basically, lots of studies show that when we use androcentric normativity in terms of promoting masculine form as encompassing all genders, we stop seeing women as being human. And we associate men with being human. And this was interesting, again, it's been really interesting in different sessions. And a couple of the sessions have been talking about AI replacing doctors, AI replacing professors. And I, every time, immediately pictured a man, a doctor that's a man, a professor that's a man. And this is the impact that androcentric normativity has, because we straight away exclude women from the landscape. So women are no longer seen as human, but men are. Women aren't part of the norm. So also in terms of, so that's the first point, men are human. The second point, binary solutions. So even when we are thinking about machine translation at the moment, a lot of the research shows that we're trying to make women visible, which is amazing. Yes, we are human too. But that doesn't consider non-binary genders. So a lot of the immediate solutions are about making women human again. And it makes me think, where does that leave our non-binary players, and where does it also leave our non-binary characters in game, like Bloodhound, for example? Oh, Bloodhound's disappeared. Oh no, there's there. Bloodhound, who's from Apex Legends, who is one of our non-binary characters. There's no language that we can use to express how they talk accurately through machine translation, not embedded anyway at the moment. So I've labelled this slide considerations. Really, it's challenges. So one of the most complicated things that we think about with non-binary language is thinking about the non-binary approach. So my role, I haven't met anyone else, I'm interested to know if there is anyone else who is an inclusive language lead or specialist who just focuses on inclusive language. But I have I'm in the fortunate position to be able to create resources and guides. In Electronic Arts internally, we have 32 different inclusive language guides for 32 different languages on how we approach non-binary language. But that's internally, that's what we've decided works best for our games, for our projects. It's not necessarily what's been adopted in different countries at the same time. We develop these guides with the help of subject matter experts in each of those languages from the non-binary community. But how can we make those decisions right now on how we're going to train machine learning, machine translation with our non-binary approach? That's just one challenge. The other challenge is this magic number of 10,000 strings. Christina, machine translation team manager, is saying 10,000 strings, that's the magic number for being able to accurately train the machines. And that's a big number, 10,000 strings of non-binary language. Where are we getting that from? And then that leads to the final point there of the resources, like, where's the budget? Where's the time? Are there additional resources needed to get that an accurate data set as well? Because that's one of the most important things. So that led to the idea of how we can create our own non-binary language strings. So we were looking internally. We have our own games rich in non-binary language. We have several characters in Battlefield, in Apex Legends, in Sims 4 as well, where we have examples of non-binary language in use. So we had it there somewhere, but EA is a massive company, so how do we kind of like get that information into our little localization department? So we had the idea of partnering with Somos, which is another employee resource group within EA for the Latino community. And we partnered with them and with Pride as well to try and leverage our internal systems to kind of create a translation beyond the binary. This was a very idealistic proposal of trying to get as many people internally who had great knowledge of Spanish to help us. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. We decided to narrow it down to Spanish because from our perspective, Spanish was the language that has most embedded, established forms of non-binary language, the very like agreed upon pronoun ella. And so that's kind of where we started off, and then we thought, okay, let's try and actually make this happen. So we started with the data set. So we used the T5 language model, which had already been trained on general Spanish language corpus with binary data. The data set process was the basis of the language model, then the training. So we tried to train it on non-binary data sets, using binary strings as the origin, and then trying to get those non-binary matches as a predicted result. And then the results, we ran inference, and I'll show you a little clip later of that. And then we did the training process. So we focused on those games like I showed you, Battlefield, Sims, Apex Legends, but it's 10,000 strings, so we needed a lot more data from games across our titles and binary strings. We then were able to use a filter because even though we had the strings, we wanted to make sure that they were the correct strings. So getting rid of duplicates, basically just cleaning it up. We were able to filter using an internal model from one of our data and AI teams. Then we curated with the help of linguistic experts for Spanish in the removing duplicates. And then we worked with Somos to leverage participation to generate these non-binary strings during Hispanic Heritage Month, so mid-September to mid-October. And we made it into a competition, you know, we were like, oh, look at these strings, who can find, like, what's the funniest string that you came across, what's the most random string, because essentially people were looking at these spreadsheets without the context of the game, and there's a lot of interesting material that came out. The winner was actually, this is just part of the sentence, but in Apex Legends we have a character called Bangalore, and the person that changed it from binary to non-binary Spanish found this quite entertaining. The original Spanish was, quizás no te importa, pero Bangalore se puse pantalones para ti. And basically, like, maybe it's not a big thing for you, but Bangalore put on trousers for you. which is very random if you're trying to go through this. We thought it was funny. And then we have just here the kind of GIF of how this worked. I think you're going to do it a bit larger. Does it come up the same? I'm not sure if you can read that from back there, but we're just highlighting when we ran inference and it came up with the non-binary language, which was a very massive thing for us. This is still a work in progress, by no means finished. We are still learning, and I think from this project, some of the lessons learned have been trying to be a bit more realistic on our limitations. Like, we started off, we were like, okay, 10,000 strings, we've got a massive company, we've got lots of Spanish speakers, we can get people to participate, and we needed a lot more strings than the end result. So being aware of like the sample size and having enough variety, because of a lot of the strings within the games that we used were just the same thing, so it wasn't actually generating more data for us that we could use. The other thing was, yeah, we have a big company with lots of Spanish speakers, but that doesn't mean that all the Spanish speakers knew some of the more complex structures of non-binary Spanish language. If you're faced with something that was totally new that you haven't seen before, and then how do you change that into non-binary Spanish? And this was, in the end, it was a great learning opportunity for people to learn that non-binary Spanish, and that was a lot of the feedback that we got back. But it did, again, put in that extra time for us that we needed to go through and review all of the strings that had been created during the kind of competition week, which in turn led to increasing the time required. Like, we're still working on this. We've got that initial base, it's going really well for the language learning model, and now we actually need to use it to train for the MT models as well. And we hope to have more results in the next couple of months.